So what happened after you returned to France?
After I returned to France, I had to do my military service. Mm-hmm. At that time, military service was compulsory in France. I had been trained during military preparation during my scholarship, and I joined the army as a young officer, sub-lieutenant. First 6 months at the school in Versailles. I was in the engineers corps, and then I was sent to Strasbourg on the border of Rhine River, and I was there at the summer of 1939, mm-hmm. And there I met with a young professor who had just been appointed to Strasbourg after having passed her exam, and she had received a scholarship to the States. She had, I don't remember the name of the scholarship, she was supposed to prepare a thesis, a doctor's thesis, mm-hmm. in geography. And she was very much concerned about the situation of French students in the United States. There were very few of them.
Right.
And someone told her that there was one of those arriving at Strasbourg. So we met. I was asked many questions about the situation of French students living in the United States. And then all of a sudden, the type of discussion changed very much, and we were married on the 14th of December 1939.
So
in the meantime, the war had come. Lucy had put her luggage on a ship to go to the States, and just 2 days before the war, and when the war was declared, she took back her luggage and decided to stay in France.
Were you at that time offered a job in the United States?
I had no need of a job in the United States. I was in the French army and there was war. Mm-hmm. So I had a full-time job at that time. Mm-hmm. Later on, the situation changed.
A year later?
So mm-hmm. I had to fight during that period. Mm-hmm. I was made a prisoner of war in June 1940. I was not yet transferred to Germany. I managed to escape in August 1940 with the help of Lucy, mm-hmm. who was able to bring me civilian clothes. And then we went to Lyon. And I had to open a small office in Lyon for my patent advisors in Paris. And Lucy was given a post of professor at Lyon. And at that time, we applied for the US visa. Mm-hmm. She has already received the visa because she had a scholarship. So I sent letters to some of my professors at MIT, and I was given affidavits, that is a certificate with which I was able to get a visa. And then one evening we had to decide whether we were going, both of us, to the States, or whether we were going to stay in France. That was somewhere in sometime, probably November 1940. In the meantime, we had begun a small game, which later was to be called Resistance, and we had a group of friends. What we were doing was not extremely important. We were writing with pieces of coal and chalk on the walls, or making des tracts, leaflets, and that kind of thing. And then we had to decide whether we were going to United States. So after a very careful analysis of the situation, we came to the conclusion that the United States were going to stay for a long time, while the game was not probably going to be as long. So we decided that for the time being we were remaining in France with our friends, and we decided that we were going to go to the States together later on. That took place 30 years later, in 1975.
It took a very long time.
In 1975.
Now, Mr. Aubrac, why did you decide to join the resistance?
To join?
Why did you decide to join the resistance?
I did not decide to join resistance because there was no resistance.
Okay.
What I decided to do was to express my opposition to the state of things at that time. The resistance came later, but in the beginning we were doing just what young people do when they have to express something, that is writing graffiti.
Graffiti, yes.
Graffiti on the wall. That was how it started. And then making leaflets on Roneo, and then later on making those underground newspapers.
Was it dangerous? Was it dangerous to be involved in this?
At the beginning it was not that dangerous. Of course it was, disobeying the law, of course. That was a transgression. Transgression. And everyone who were going into that kind of field had to decide to disobey. Each one of them has done that. And of course there was, even in the beginning, some danger. But we were in the south of France. The German army was occupying the north of France. So in the south of France we were faced with the Vichy regime, and of course it was against the law to do what we did, but the danger was only a few months of prison, of jail. It became very much more dangerous later on, when the game became more serious. But you see, that's very amazing to consider that all these people were volunteers. Nobody had been forced into that kind of action.
Of course.
And even when it became dangerous, even very dangerous, they stayed. Very few of them left. They were linked with their friends. And solidarity. You have that word?
Solidarity. Well, speaking of, so it first started as a disobedience against the Nazi occupation, and how did it become Libération-Sud? How did it become movement? Libération-Sud.
Libération-Sud. Comment est-ce que vous êtes passé le simple fait de désobéissance à un mouvement?
When we decided to produce a newspaper, we had to make a choice for a title.
Right.
And we decided to call it Libération.
Okay.
Libération, that was... I wrote with my hand the first name, Libération, on the first ground, on the first issue of that paper. And of course, producing underground paper was not a simple business.
No.
The easiest part was to write the article. Then you had to find paper, you had to find ink, you had to find someone to print, you have to distribute that against the police, and that was the game.